This is Talk. As I say, it is the home of common sense. Delighted to say common sense is here in the studio. Maybe you don't think it from me, but certainly from Russell Quirk, who's a political commentator and is joining us. Good morning to you.
Common sense personified.
Common sense, absolutely. Well, yes.
I think that's the whole station.
Isn't this?
Well,
it is now. It is now.
It is indeed.
It is very much now. And for those who just tuning in, you obviously been doing a lot more shows, hosting, and not just sitting in the corner drinking your coffee.
Talking occasionally.
But no, and you're going to be hosting on Friday morning as well. This show from 10 to 1, so that'll be a great.
Looking forward to it. Yeah, big shoes to fill. You, Alex.
Well, I'm size 8. To be fair, I'm very tall. Yeah. So I have this all the time. People, whenever I meet people, they go, "You're very tall." I'm like, well, I suppose it doesn't come across on telly, does it? If
you can't really see.
5'11".
You sit down all the time. But I'm very much looking forward to Friday.
It's going to be fabulous.
Don't listen.
Great listen. I'm definitely going to listen. I'm going to listen. And I'm going to message in. I'm going to call into the show.
I know what you're going to message me. You're just going to halfway through. You're just going to say you're rubbish. Aren't you?
I would never do that. I'm your biggest cheerleader, as you know. Right. I mean, in fact, I want you to call in. I mean, I'm going to call into Russell. I want you to call in. Nigel Farage has pledged to lead a political revolt as the new leader of Reform UK, and he's called for zero net migration this morning. I want to know from you, very simply, is this the start of a political revolution? Tell us why you think it is. Tell us why you think it isn't. Lots of messages already coming in. You can call on 0344 499 1000 and send a WhatsApp to that number at the same time. You can text on 87222. You can tweet us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1. Standard network rate message. Mostly, I do want to hear you on the phones. 0344 499 1000. We're going to get to a call very quickly in a few moments, but let's just go back just to where we are in terms of Nigel Farage. He's launching his campaign in Clacton on Sea at 12 o'clock today. We are told, hoping to take that live. We're inviting any other candidates in Clacton. Welcome to come on the show at any time as well. But what do you make? I mean, is this a political revolt? Does this actually change things? It's a bit of fun for us to talk about, but does it really make a difference to anything?
I think it does, and I think there's always an argument that within these little political bubbles, the kind of media circus, that this stuff is interesting. But I think this is genuinely interesting and compelling for everybody. As we said earlier on, I think Farage has definitely got this Boris effect. People know who he is. They like listening to him. He is a bit of a showman. Says actually what a lot of the country are thinking. I think people also think that, as he did with Brexit, what Nigel Farage says he will do, he will probably do, which is rather refreshing when it comes to politicians, because most of them spout a load of stuff about what they're going to do, policy and so on, and then they don't actually do it. So I think it will re-engage the electorate. I think it is a sea change, and I expect to see the Conservatives, Labour and even the Lib Dems lurching to the right in response.
I would have thought the Lib Dems would do very different things. I mean,
maybe more water slides, more kayaks.
I had to watch that live. This whole notion of left and right, again, I still think is madness now, because the sort of what is supposedly the centre ground now is shifted so far to the left in terms of what is considered, what are the norms in terms of higher tax rates, government, the role of big government and things like that. There's been such a sea change. The Overton windows just shifted massively to the left, and so that parties like Reform UK, in fact, some people on the right of the Tory party, we could use those terms, regarded as, they're regarded as extreme right, hard right, far right, for saying things like, I don't think we should have unlimited immigration to this country or mass immigration. Now, or I think we should have lower taxes. Those are,
that's centre-right.
I don't even think they're centre-right. Those are widespread opinions in this country, among Labour voters as well.
But the positioning by the Twitterati, or the Exerati, as I suppose they are now, and
you see, it doesn't work, does it?
No, it's not the same, is it? Let's stick to Twitterati. So the commentariat, the media and so on, have been very, very good. Some in the media at repositioning those that are concerned about immigration, crime, high tax and so on as right/far right. And that's a real problem. And it does stick. So of course, as soon as you start talking about immigration, you're automatically a racist.
Yeah, that is part of the problem, isn't it? And in terms of the ability of Nigel Farage, whoever does actually get elected as a Reform UK MP, you've got, if it's just him, if it's just Lee Anderson re-elected, having crossed the floor from the Tories, if it's anybody, just one or two, or even 6 or 7, does that make a difference? We've seen the impact that Liberal Democrats had when they had a large number of seats, and then they've gone back down, and they just you become a bit of an irrelevance. If, according to this latest poll, and this is a fantastically interesting poll. From this is the YouGov poll for Sky News. and it's a projection for the House of Commons, and they are looking at, and it's an MRP projection. This is a very sort of complicated but huge sample of people. It's 50,000 people. And okay, this was done before Nigel Farage decided to run and be leader. But their projection is a potential Labour majority of 194 seats. So they'd go from 200, sorry, they go from about 200 seats to up 222 seats to 422. The Tories would lose 232 seats and only be on 140. This would be the worst result in more than 100 years. Lib Dems, though, going from 8 seats to 48. SNP down 31 to just 17. Greens just going from 1 to 2. But they were predicting no seats for reform at all. I mean, that's a massive big change.
Yeah, I think that obviously we have to take polls with a pinch of salt, particularly 4 weeks out from polling day. We know that polls, as you said earlier on, exit polls, yes, correct, generally within a very small margin. These kind of polls, of course, depends who's asking them, who the audience is, where the biases are, and particularly where the biases are in terms of how the questions are asked.
But most election campaigns don't see more than 1 or 2 percentage point changes. They really don't. I mean, the 2017 one was very unusual in terms of that the dementia tax and Theresa May. If you go back to 2010, the leaders' debates, everyone agreed with Clegg.
2016,
he lost seats.
2016, the most compelling election where the polls were very wrong.
Well, it wasn't an election, referendum.
Referendum, yeah. It was 2016 when the polls got it drastically wrong, to the point that those on the right, those Brexiteers, us, but even Nigel Farage and others, and Boris Johnson were conceding defeat.
I went to bed at 1:30.
And the polls were wrong. The polls were wrong. And if this is an immigration election, as you and I agree it really is, I mean, it's not just about immigration.
But it's about immigration. But it's about immigration impacts on the economy, on housing, on culture.
Yes.
And
Then I think the polls may well be very, very wrong indeed, especially 4 weeks out. And as I said earlier, I think that Nigel Farage standing now, in terms of how compelling that is, I think also means that we'll start to see the Reform Party grab votes not just from the Conservatives but from Labour as well. That should not be underestimated. This is not now just a split on the right. There are lots of Labour voters that are concerned about immigration.
And particularly those Labour voters in the Red Wall seats who then voted for Brexit over the control of the border. I mean, so the Tories have launched their immigration policy we were discussing earlier, but they're talking about basically having a cap on immigration. But Rishi Sunak is not going to give a number. We never get a number. It's going to be lower each year. But you're going to have a migration advisory body of experts who are going to say how many people we need to have in.
Good old
and then
experts.
There'll be a vote in Parliament. We love those experts, yeah. But this is the thing. You know exactly what they're going to say. And even Nigel Farage, when he was questioned on BBC this morning about, who to have in, oh, yeah, you need some care workers, oh, yes, you need this, yes, you need that, everyone, on each individual thing, people go, well, yes, we'll have those people. But what the British people have been saying again and again is we only need to have the highly skilled people. You're not a net contributor tax-wise in terms of how many public services you use until you're earning well over 40 grand. Most people who come into this country don't earn even half that.
It's pointless and it's mealy-mouthed for the two main parties to start talking about immigration without actually being able to say, A, how they're going to curb that legal and illegal immigration, but also, of course, you've got to put a number on it. Of course, the reason they won't put a number on it was because David Cameron famously did in 2010. He said, I'll get net migration down to the tens of thousands. Let's now roll forward 14 years, same government, effectively different people, net migration 700,000 a year.
764,000, I think. I mean, the number is just so mind-blowing.
They've got to put a number on it.
That's net, and so it's more than 1.1 million more people, or I think 1.2 million last year, coming into the country.
Yeah.
And again, it's a question, who are the people who are leaving? Are we losing, a load of highly trained graduates, doctors and the like, and who's coming in? Oh, good.
Yes.
Someone's coming in to work in a restaurant and pick veg. Brilliant. That's a fair exchange.
But how do we believe...
Although, of course, everyone coming across on the boats... Those are, of course, all engineers
and
nuclear
doctors.
scientists and doctors.
They are, yeah.
Do try to keep up.
But of course they are. They go without saying, Julia. But I mean, how are we supposed to believe politicians in the run-up to an election if they can't even put a number on the pledge that they're making, let alone how they're going to orchestrate that pledge?
Yeah, but also, why do we need people to do any of these jobs? Well, we've established we've got millions of people who have working age.
Million vacancies.
We had a fascinating call actually yesterday. I can't remember the chap's name, but he called up. He runs a recruitment agency, and he says people from the job centre, they send an application because they have to send an application to prove they're looking for work, and then they don't give you the right mobile number, or they have a job and then they don't turn up, and then they go back to the benefits office and say, well, you know, I've applied for all these jobs. They get signed for another couple of weeks. There you go. There's your benefits. And it's, you know, he says it's on such a scale.
Yeah,
and I've got a really good friend who works in the benefits office. I know all the tricks that are used. You know,
there are a million vacancies, and there are also 5 million people in this country that are fit for work but are not in work
working.
or not looking
exactly.
for work.
And I'm kind of a view like, oh, okay, I know you live in a former mining village in Wales and you haven't got a bus service. Well, you know what? Yeah. Maybe you need to move somewhere where there are some jobs.
Or maybe we need to curb the £300 billion a year we spend on benefits, albeit that includes pensions. So £150 billion a year that we spend on benefits. Maybe we move back from that. Maybe make the benefits regime tougher.
Yeah, I've just said again and again. It just seems to be so basic. It's
easy, isn't
it? You have a moral duty to work. If you can work, you should work. It's just you need to be a net contributor if you can be. It's just I don't understand why people don't think that is a basis of civil society.
And the taxpayer does not have an obligation to keep you in Netflix.
No. No, they really, really don't do that. It's like, well, people are scraping by on benefits. If it's unemployment benefits, well, yeah, that's kind of the point. It's how you're supposed to be motivated, isn't it? Can I just go back to also this poll that suggests, a massive Tory wipeout and a massive Labour majority? And again, it may well be that it's a much smaller majority. Again, voters have a funny way of doing what voters do, and we shall see on the day. There's that because there's a lot of don't knows, a lot of undecided at the moment, and not much enthusiasm for Keir Starmer in the way that there had been for a lot of people for Tony Blair at the time. I mean, that's just what the polls are saying. That's not my personal opinion. That is, I'm not allowed to give my personal opinion on these things, but that is what the polls are saying. But the Tory big beasts who could lose their seats are, I mean, you know, some of the leadership contenders. I mean, there's Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor. I think everyone will be happy if he loses his seat. I mean, seriously, Grant Shapps, Defence Secretary, a would-be Tory leader. Alex Chalk, the Justice Secretary. Gillian Keegan, the Education Secretary. Penny Mordaunt, leader of the Commons, another would-be Tory leader, are losing their seats. I mean, that makes things very different in terms of the years ahead.
Mark Francois, you know, beasts of the right. You know, and again, as we said earlier, what does that mean for the rebuilding of the Conservative Party? What it means is Nigel Farage might be right. You know, he talked in The Sun on Saturday or Sunday, whenever it was, about, you know, a takeover of the Conservatives in the aftermath of the defeat, and that this is all about 2029 for him, and I suspect that he's right.
Just finally, I just want to ask you about Labour's deadline today. The National Executive Committee of Labour, NEC, they're meeting today to approve all candidates. We know that Diane Abbott said she wants to run. We know as another would-be candidate, Faiza Shaheen, she thought she was going to be the candidate. Now she's been told she says she can't run. We shall see what happens at the end of that. Friday is the date this week when all candidates, you have to be nominated. That's it, done deal. Just wondering, what do you make of the Labour policy? Do you think that lots of voters will be very impressed that Keir Starmer has been strong on ousting a lot of the Corbynite leaders?
But he hasn't been strong, has he? Because, you know, he was very strong on Corbyn and Diane Abbott and so on, Russell Lloyd, whatever his name is, and so on. But then he backtracked on Diane Abbott, even though he said a year ago, when she wrote that fateful letter to the Observer, that he believed that what she said was anti-Semitic. But
she's gone on a course since. She's been re-educated.
I think it was 2 hours, as long as that.
She's been re-educated.
Yeah. So he called her effectively anti-Semitic, said that therefore she couldn't be in the party, then changed his mind and said that she could be, then changed his mind on whether she should stand.
You don't think that it adds up?
I think it depends.
Is it a sign of strength or weakness that let her stand?
Wouldn't it be hilarious and quite predictable if she does end up in the Lords, and maybe there's some other bribes to be thrown at her before the NEC?
I do really object to the House of Lords, a place in the House of Lords being offered. Also, I love all these lefties who take seats in the House of Lords.
Starmer did say he was going to abolish it, so it's a bit hypocritical to say he's going to stuff it full of the people he doesn't like.
Well, they all do that. But it's like John Prescott, exactly.
But maybe that's a masterstroke.
But loads on the Tory side said they wouldn't do it, and then
put them all in the Lords and then get rid of the Lords.
Only reason Tony Blair didn't, because he didn't want to have to do the register of interest. Anyway,